belongs in zone 4, so it belongs to me. Saturday morning, we had a couple of youthful offenders, we're juveniles, went up to the front door of a house and knocked on it. The house was, I think it was 305 Hampton Park. They knocked on the house door. The guy inside he works late at night. He owns a bar downtown, so he was asleep. He heard the knocking, but he said, I'm not getting up and answer the door. I'm going back to sleep. The knocking stopped. About 15 minutes later, he's back asleep, and all of a sudden he hears a loud crash from the basement area of his house. Well, him and his dog walk out on the back deck to see what it is. There's a black male standing up under his deck with a stick in his hand, busting the rear window out of his house. The guy sees him, takes off running, runs directly behind him, right back onto that path that we told you about. And as he's watching him run, he's obviously calling 911, giving us a good description. Well, he sees another black male come from the house beside him and run down and meet up with the first black male. They take off back towards Paldo. The description was so good that one of our officers went around to Paldo, where we know the cut in the fence is at, saw a group of individuals there, saw one that matched the description he gave, and says, you come with me, I want to talk to you a minute. The kid comes over and talks to him. The victim complainant comes, we get a patrol car, go get him, bring him to Paldo, because we can't just randomly grab this guy up and take him back to the victim. So the victim comes to Paldo, sees him, and says, that's him. That's the one I saw beside my house. We hooked him up, take him out to the east side of the police station, do an interview on him, call his parents, which happens to be his grandparents. And while we're talking to them, the grandmother goes back to her house and sees his buddy, who he's always with, and whose name we already had as the other party, calls us and said, he's right here, he just ran from me. Gives us a description of him. Another officer gets in Paldo, finds him, hooks him up, brings him out. We do interviews with both of them. Both of them end up admitting to to the burglary. Burglary attempt is what it's actually called, because they didn't get inside. The one fella was, based on points, the Department of Juvenile Justice will either release you to your parents, or they will send you back to what's called RYDC, which is a youth detention center, juvenile jail. One of them got sent to juvenile jail. One of them got released to his parents. The one that got sent to juvenile jail returned Monday for what's called a detention hearing. At the detention hearing, he admitted his violations. In other words, he said, I'm guilty. I did what they charged me with. He was sentenced to 60 days in a boot camp program. He's gone. He will not be back for 60 days. When he comes back, he'll be an adult. When he comes back, if we deal with him again, he goes to real jail. The second offender is he's either 13 or 15, and pardon me, I got so many of them on my mind, I can't remember. But is he 13? He's 13 years old. He lives with his grandmother in Paldo, and when we have his hearing, he will be, I fully believe, adjudicated guilty or delinquent is what they call it, and then sentenced. I don't know what they'll sentence him to. I have no idea. That'll be up to the juvenile court system. But we did a consent search of his house, and in the consent search of his house with his grandmother, they didn't find anything until they went in his room. When they went in his room, they found this brown case. The brown case had some earrings in it, individual earrings. It's kind of weird. It's individual earrings. There's a pocket knife, and there's a wristwatch. Grandma said, that stuff doesn't belong to him. It doesn't belong to my house. Get it out of here. So we took it out. We know it belongs to some of y'all. We just don't know who. They're small items. They're things that may have not been missed yet, or may not have been reported. They're going to put them on the website, but if any of you are here that are victims of any of the burglaries, if you will take a look at this stuff and just see if it looks familiar to you, because I would love to be able to put, to charge this kid with some more of these burglaries. I've also we've got 3 different names where we have their prints. They're juveniles, but we have their prints to do comparisons on. Before we didn't have prints to be able to compare. Now we've got some prints based on some other crimes that have been committed, and we're having our forensics guys process the prints that were obtained from the crime scenes against these guys' prints. Hopefully we'll get some matches. We don't know yet. I won't know that probably for another week, 10 days. As soon as I know and find out about the matches, I'll send an email and she can put them up on the website. But if y'all have any questions for me, I'm open to questions. Yes, ma'am.
It's more like a statement. When that robbery happened, my brother-in-law was out on the front porch, and he came running in the house. And he said, I just saw 3 guys knocking on this guy's door. He said, next door to where...
So how many guys?
It was 3. It was 3 of them.
Saw 3?
It was 3 guys. He said, and he said, what should I do? What should I do? I said, well, let's call the police. So I called 911. I told 911 that there's a burglary or robbery getting ready to happen in Hampton Park. And while the 911 guy had me on the phone, he was asking like 50 questions, and I kept saying, could you please hurry up, just send
All right.
somebody.
Let me clarify something for you guys that don't know. The dispatcher that you're talking to on the telephone, and you feel like, would you please send somebody, would you please send somebody? While they are asking you questions, they are typing into a screen. Every time they hit enter, that screen sends it to the dispatcher. The dispatcher is dispatching that call while you're talking. The more information you give are subsequent, they call them beeps. They beep the screen of the officer in the car, they beep the dispatcher, and give more information. That call is being dispatched. So don't worry about thinking, well, quit asking me questions and just send somebody. They have to ask you the questions, but they are sending somebody. They're already dispatching.
That's kind of the impression that I got, you know, but you know,
Yeah, I know, the whole time you're sitting there going, will you please, yeah, so,
said,
I understand.
come in here and talk to him. So he took the phone and he went outside. So as the dispatcher was on the phone with him, when my brother-in-law came back in, he said the dispatcher was having him describe to him exactly what he saw. And he was telling him that while he was describing it, somebody was en route.
What happens when you describe all that stuff is recorded, and it's a great tool for me to go back and pull the recordings and listen and get an exact description of the eyewitness who is seeing the crime in progress. I'm getting that perfect description from them. So, y'all please do that. We've had several good calls from Hampton Park in the last couple of weeks and have been out there, and we're doing a real good job. Y'all are doing a real good job of helping yourselves, helping us, but helping yourselves. So, any other questions?
So as far as we know, most of these crimes are being committed by juveniles?
I would say 80% or better are being committed by juveniles. And they're juveniles that are 13 to 16 years old. Most of the ones that we're dealing with in your neighborhood are coming from the Paldo area and Hawthorne area. And I don't mean to sound like I'm dumping that on Housing Authority, but that just is the truth of the matter. The Housing Authority, you guys, the Housing Authority, they're wonderful. There's a fence all the way around Paldo. The manager for the Housing Authority says they keep cutting it, and I keep fixing it. Every time it gets cut and he finds out about it, he sends somebody out there to fix it. So they're helping you. It may not sound like it, but they're just wearing that fence out there. By the time it's over, I think you're going to have a whole new fence.
Do they have surveillance to see who?
They don't yet, but they're going to. They're in the process of it, so are we. Of getting that taken care of, where we can actually see who's cutting it, because cutting that fence up there is a felony. Because it's interference with government property, and it's damage is more than $500, so it hurts them.
But like he said about juveniles, the most that they're getting charged with is juvenile detention or boot camp.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it. Now, having said that, once they become a designated felon, which is once they're convicted of 4 felonies, they become a designated felon. At the time they become a designated felon, then they go to real juvenile jail, as opposed to boot camp or some YDC. They actually go to juvenile prison once they become designated felons. And they can be sentenced then from 30 days, 60 days, till the time they're 18 years old, just depending upon what they do.
But like depending on the prints of, I mean, there's like, what, 9 houses?
9 houses, so
So if all the prints
essentially, if all the stars line up and the moon hits just right and everything goes right and I get all these prints to match, one of these kids could get 9 burglaries. If he gets 9 burglaries, he'll be a designated felon, he'll go to jail.
Regardless if he's,
Juvenile or adult, he will go
Okay.
to jail. He will be in confinement, what they call confinement.
So
We
even
call
if
it
he's
jail,
13
but
or
yeah,
whatever.
but we call it jail, they call it confinement. They have their own terminology. It's detention. Detention is what they do now with them, and that's just sitting under the RYDC, which is essentially, it's like a real strong timeout at your house, so to speak. I mean, they're locked up, they eat, they drink, they sleep, they go to school, they're made to do certain things, but they're still in confinement. But when they go to juvenile jail, they're in jail just like anybody else is. It just happens to be in jail with the same age, as opposed to with adults.